Most people spend their lives searching for external reasons to explain their suffering. They look at failures, at betrayals, at missed opportunities, as if life itself is conspiring against them. And yet, when you strip away all distractions, all justifications, all excuses, what remains is a simple truth, the root of most suffering. The hidden force that quietly erodes lives is the inability to control oneself. It is silent because it does not announce its presence. It does not make a grand entrance. It creeps into your life in subtle ways, whispering that a small indulgence will not matter, that one reaction will not change anything, that one moment of disregard for discipline is harmless. And slowly, silently, it accumulates until suddenly it is not small anymore, until suddenly it has destroyed what you once held most dear. Self-control is more than just saying no to temptation or resisting a fleeting desire. It is the constant, quiet practice of governing your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses. It is the ability to observe the surge of anger without reacting immediately, to notice desire without blindly following it, to recognize pride without letting it dictate your actions. When this skill is weak, when it is neglected, the smallest impulses become your masters. You begin to live reactively rather than intentionally, letting momentary feelings dictate decisions that have long-term consequences. And because this process happens internally, within the mind, it is largely invisible to others, which makes its destructiveness even more dangerous. People see the results, the anger, the loss, the failure, but rarely the moments that led to them, the seconds where self-control could have altered the path, but was absent. The first place self-control falters is often in the mind. Thoughts arise incessantly, many of them trivial, many of them harmful. And without the discipline to choose which thoughts deserve attention, you drift aimlessly, allowing destructive patterns to form. Anger, jealousy, resentment, fear, impatience, these are all ordinary human responses, but unchecked, they become silent saboteurs. A thought can seem harmless, fleeting, unimportant. I'll just say this, you tell yourself, but won't matter. But every uncontrolled thought, every reaction that follows without pause leaves a trace, slowly reshaping your character, your relationships, your decisions. In this way, lack of self-control is not just an external problem. It is a fundamental corruption of the internal world where the seeds of silent self-destruction take root. Impulse is another enemy. The world constantly tempts with immediate gratification. The rise of technology, of endless content, of instant pleasure, has trained the mind to expect rewards without effort, to act before reflecting, to feel before thinking. And when self-control is weak, you surrender to these impulses repeatedly. You spend money you do not have. You eat or drink or indulge in ways that damage the body. You react in ways that damage relationships. You chase fleeting pleasure at the cost of long-term stability. Each impulsive action feels small, insignificant, even justifiable in the moment. Yet, like water dripping on stone, these moments carve deep marks over time. What seems harmless today becomes irreversible tomorrow. The quiet accumulation of these small failures is what ultimately destroys a life, and yet it is so rarely recognized for what it is. Emotions, when uncontrolled, also lead to silent self-destruction. They are powerful, immediate, and persuasive. Anger feels like righteousness, desire feels like necessity, fear feels like protection. Without self-control, emotions dictate behavior, often in ways that undermine your goals, your health, your relationships, and your peace of mind. A single outburst of anger can sever trust. A single indulgence in desire can compromise integrity. A single act of cowardice in the face of fear can set off a chain of consequences that cannot be undone. And these moments, although small and seemingly isolated, compound. They pile upon one another until you no longer recognize the life you are living. The destruction happens quietly in the private space of the mind and heart, far from the scrutiny of others and often far from your own recognition until it is almost too late. Another aspect of self-destruction stems from the inability to delay gratification. Humans have a natural tendency to seek comfort, pleasure, and avoidance of discomfort. Those who lack self-control prioritize short-term satisfaction over long-term benefits. They choose what feels easy now rather than what builds strength, resilience, and security for tomorrow. They skip the practice, the discipline, the preparation, and then wonder why they cannot achieve their goals. They allow temporary impulses to dictate permanent outcomes, trading small comfort for long-term loss, and yet rationalize it as harmless or inevitable. This cycle repeats endlessly. Each decision made without control is a brick added to the wall, separating the present from the life you wish to have. And because it is gradual, silent, and cumulative, it is often invisible until the structure collapses. Relationships are particularly vulnerable to lack of self-control. People do not ruin relationships in grand, dramatic ways. They ruin them slowly through repeated moments of selfishness, impatience, and impulsive reactions. A harsh word said in anger, a broken promise made out of convenience, a choice made without consideration. These may seem minor, yet their effects accumulate silently. Over time, trust erodes, intimacy fades, and love diminishes. The loss is profound, yet the cause, failure to govern one's own impulses, is subtle. Others may blame circumstances, misunderstandings, or timing, but the root is always internal, a failure to exercise restraint and awareness in the moment. Self-control also shapes how you handle adversity. Life is not fair, life is not predictable, and life is not always kind. Those without self-control respond chaotically to setbacks. They react with anger, despair, or reckless action. They blame others, avoid responsibility, or make impulsive choices to escape discomfort. And in doing so, they magnify the damage. They may recover temporarily, but the long-term trajectory of their lives is altered. Self-destruction in this sense is silent because it is often internalized. Outwardly, one may appear to survive or even thrive, but inwardly, the erosion continues. Strength, opportunity, and peace slip quietly away. The irony is that self-control is accessible to all, yet few commit to it fully. It requires awareness, patience, and repeated effort. Every moment of restraint is an investment in your future. Every decision to pause, reflect, and choose wisely strengthens the foundation of your life. Conversely, every moment surrendered to impulsive desire, uncontrolled emotion, or unchecked thought erodes that foundation. The process is slow and subtle, so much so that it is often unnoticed. But the results are inevitable. Ultimately, lack of self-control is the root of silent self-destruction because it transforms fleeting impulses into permanent consequences, temporary lapses into lasting regret, and minor errors into cumulative collapse. It is quiet, invisible, and relentless. It operates not by dramatic events, but through the steady erosion of character, health, relationships, and potential. Those who ignore it believe they are living freely, yet they are prisoners of their impulses. They believe they are lucky or unlucky, righteous or wronged, yet the truth is always internal. The ability to manage oneself, to master impulses, to exercise restraint in thought, emotion, and action is the difference between growth and decay, between fulfillment and regret, between a life that flourishes and a life that silently unravels. Emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are natural responses, signals from within, and reflections of how we interpret the world. They inform us, guide us, and connect us to our experiences. But when emotions are unmanaged, when they are allowed to dictate behavior without awareness or restraint, they become silent saboteurs. They are invisible forces that creep into every corner of life, undermining relationships, decisions, and personal peace. They are subtle, deceptive, and relentless, quietly steering lives toward chaos while disguising themselves as justification, passion, or instinct. Consider anger. It begins as a spark, a reaction to something perceived as unfair or threatening. Left unchecked, it spreads like wildfire. A sharp word, an impatient gesture, a reckless decision, all born from a momentary surge of emotion, can destroy trust, sever bonds, and create consequences far beyond what was intended. The danger of anger is that it disguises itself as righteousness. It tells you that you are justified, that your reaction is necessary, that your impulse is unavoidable. But the truth is that every time you surrender to anger, you relinquish control over yourself. And control is the foundation of every aspect of life, relationships, career, health, and personal growth. Fear operates similarly. Fear is meant to protect, to alert, to prepare. But when unmanaged, it becomes a prison. Fear convinces you to avoid discomfort, to shy away from challenges, to shrink instead of expanding. It whispers that taking risks is dangerous, that pursuing dreams is reckless, that standing firm will invite pain. Over time, fear left unchecked erodes courage and self-belief. It limits your potential silently, gradually, until you are no longer living fully, but simply existing, guided by the avoidance of pain rather than the pursuit of growth. Fear becomes an internal enemy that convinces you to remain small, invisible, and safe, while your potential slips quietly into the background. Desire, too, is a double-edged sword. The drive to achieve, to acquire, or to experience pleasure is natural, But when unmanaged, desire becomes a master, not a tool. It tempts you to chase fleeting satisfaction at the cost of long-term stability. It whispers that indulgence is harmless, that a moment of weakness is inconsequential, that giving in will not matter. Yet these small concessions accumulate over time, shaping patterns of behavior that are destructive. Relationships, finances, health, and integrity are often casualties of unmanaged desire. The mind convinces you that pleasure is immediate and necessary, while the consequences, often delayed, quietly compound and grow until they are irreversible. Desire, when unmanaged, transforms from motivation into addiction, from opportunity into downfall. Even positive emotions, when unmanaged, can betray you. Excitement can become recklessness, passion can become obsession, optimism can become denial. Love, without boundaries and awareness, can become dependency or co-dependence. Happiness, when sought compulsively, can lead to escapism. Emotions themselves are neutral, but the failure to manage them, to observe them without being consumed, is what turns even the best feelings into destructive forces. The untrained mind mistakes intensity for wisdom, immediacy for importance, and reaction for action. In this way, unmanaged emotion disguises itself as vitality, yet secretly erodes the foundation of life. The danger of unmanaged emotions is compounded by their invisibility. Unlike external threats, emotions are not always obvious to others. You may be angry while smiling. You may feel fear while appearing confident. You may crave something deeply while acting indifferent. And in many ways, this invisibility makes them even more dangerous. You do not see the damage being done in real time. You do not perceive the ripple effects of each impulsive decision, each reaction born of emotion rather than reason. By the time the consequences are evident, the damage is often extensive and difficult to repair. Broken relationships, lost opportunities, compromised integrity, these are the inevitable results of repeated moments of emotional surrender. Emotions also affect the quality of thought. When the mind is flooded with uncontrolled emotion, clarity disappears. Reason becomes clouded, judgment becomes distorted. Decisions made in the heat of a surge, whether of anger, fear, desire, or even excitement, are rarely wise. They favor the immediate and the personal, often at the expense of the greater good, long-term vision, or moral integrity. A single uncontrolled reaction can trigger a chain of events that seems beyond repair, yet it begins with something invisible, an emotion that was felt, believed, and acted upon without awareness. In this sense, unmanaged emotions are not just obstacles, they are architects of silent destruction, designing outcomes that serve themselves rather than the individual. Moreover, unmanaged emotions create patterns. One unrestrained outburst leads to another. One indulgence leads to repeated indulgences. One fearful avoidance leads to a lifetime of caution and stagnation. Patterns, once formed, are difficult to break because they are internalized at the level of habit and character. The mind and heart become conditioned to react rather than respond. Life, then, is not navigated but survived, guided by impulses rather than intention. The person may appear functional, may appear happy or productive, but internally, the erosion is constant. Peace, clarity, and fulfillment recede with each moment surrendered to unmanaged emotional force. Relationships are particularly vulnerable to this internal sabotage. Unmanaged emotions create cycles of misunderstanding, conflict, and regret. Anger, jealousy, and impatience damage trust. Desire unchecked can create dependency or betrayal. Fear and insecurity drive withdrawal, avoidance, and overreaction. Even moments of joy or love without boundaries or awareness can create imbalance, expectation, or attachment that is destructive. The person affected by these emotions may not understand why their life feels chaotic, why connection feels fragile, why success seems elusive. Yet the cause is internal. It is the silent, relentless influence of emotions left unmanaged, unchecked, and unobserved, gradually steering the course of life toward instability and loss. Self-mastery is the antidote. It is the practice of observing emotions, understanding their origin, and choosing whether and how to act on them. It is learning to sit with anger without exploding, to notice desire without immediately satisfying it, to experience fear without letting it dictate action. It is understanding that emotions are information, not commands, signals, not absolutes. Through awareness and restraint, the destructive force of unmanaged emotion is transformed into insight, wisdom, and strength. Emotional mastery does not mean suppression, it means discernment. It does not mean denial, it means understanding. It does not mean weakness, it is the ultimate expression of internal power. The consequence of failing to master this is simple: life is quietly eroded from within. Opportunities are missed, relationships crumble, peace is lost, and potential remains unrealized. The danger is silent because it does not scream, it does not knock, it does not warn. It is the subtle, constant guidance of emotion unobserved, reaction unchecked, and impulse unexamined. And while the person may appear to live freely, they are in truth enslaved by the very forces that should serve them, unaware that their greatest enemy exists within, invisible yet omnipresent, quiet yet devastating, subtle yet unstoppable. Desire is one of the most natural forces in life. It drives ambition, fuels creativity, and ignites passion. Every human being carries within them countless wants, wishes, and aspirations. We desire success, love, recognition, freedom, wealth, mastery. Desire can feel overwhelming at times, so vivid that it seems almost tangible, as though reaching out and grasping it is merely a matter of effort. Yet desire alone is insufficient. Desire unaccompanied by discipline remains a dream, a fantasy, a fleeting thought that disappears with distraction or discomfort. Without discipline, desire is like a river without banks. It flows erratically, overflows, dissipates, and accomplishes nothing. Discipline is the bridge, the invisible, unglamorous, persistent bridge that connects the energy of desire to the tangible reality of achievement. Many people underestimate the power of discipline because it feels restrictive. Discipline requires patience, structure, and repeated effort. It asks for resistance to short-term gratification in favor of long-term gain. It demands consistency when excitement fades, when passion weakens, when motivation seems absent. It asks you to do what must be done, not necessarily what you want to do in the moment. Desire is seductive because it promises pleasure, recognition, and fulfillment. Discipline is demanding because it asks for action, sometimes tedious, often repetitive, and rarely celebrated. Yet it is only through discipline that desire is transformed into reality. The journey from desire to reality is not sudden. It is a slow accumulation of choices made in the absence of recognition or reward. The first step is acknowledgement, understanding that without structure, without habitual effort, without restraint, desire remains a fleeting thought. Most people fail at this early stage. They confuse wanting with acting, dreaming with building, wishing with working. They assume that desire alone is sufficient, that longing itself creates results. But reality does not bend to longing. Reality requires action, strategy, focus, and above all, discipline. Discipline creates a framework for desire. It organizes the chaotic energy of wanting into actionable steps. When desire is raw, it is scattered, unfocused, sometimes overwhelming. Discipline channels this energy, guiding it toward productive effort. For example, a person may desire to achieve mastery in a craft, to become financially independent, or to cultivate deep relationships. Desire provides the vision, but discipline provides the path. Discipline is the daily repetition of practice, the refusal to be distracted by trivialities, the commitment to doing what is necessary, even when inspiration is absent. It is the bridge between the spark of wanting and the fire of realization. One of the most misunderstood aspects of discipline is its relationship with comfort. Desire often seduces by promising immediate satisfaction. Discipline often requires delay, discomfort, sacrifice. These moments of tension, choosing to act rather than indulge, choosing to endure rather than escape, choosing consistency rather than sporadic bursts, are where discipline reveals its true power. Desire may whisper that comfort is more important, that ease is preferable, that the present moment should not be challenged. Discipline whispers back, reality is built in the tension between what you want now and what you will gain later. The bridge is not always easy to cross, but it is necessary. Consider the role of discipline in learning. A desire to acquire knowledge is easy to have. Anyone can say, I want to be smart, skilled, capable. But knowledge does not arrive through desire alone. It requires time, focus, and repeated practice. It demands persistence when comprehension falters, patience when results are slow, and resilience when failure occurs. Discipline turns desire into mastery by creating habits that align with long-term goals. It is the daily study, the deliberate practice, the conscious effort that others overlook but that produces the extraordinary. Discipline is also the guardian of consistency. Desire is unpredictable. It waxes and wanes with mood, circumstances, and external validation. One day motivation is high, the next it disappears entirely. Without discipline, action becomes erratic, inconsistent, unreliable. Progress stagnates, momentum falters, and dreams fade. Discipline enforces continuity, ensuring that effort persists even when desire ebbs. It is a silent, powerful force that carries individuals forward while others wait for inspiration to strike. The disciplined person understands that the bridge does not rely on emotion, but on structure. Reality is not built in moments of fervor, but in sustained effort over time. Emotional resilience is another gift of discipline. Desire is often accompanied by impatience and expectation. People want results quickly, and when they do not arrive, frustration builds. Discipline tempers this impatience. It teaches patience, endurance, and strategic focus. It allows individuals to accept delayed gratification, to endure setbacks without losing direction, and to remain committed to goals despite uncertainty. Without discipline, desire leads to frustration and despair. With discipline, desire becomes actionable, manageable, and eventually attainable. Discipline also cultivates awareness. It forces individuals to confront reality honestly, to recognize what is within their control and what is not. Desire can blind. It can make the mind fixate on outcomes without appreciating the process. Discipline brings clarity. It highlights the daily choices, habits, and behaviors that create success, and it exposes the distractions, excuses, and indulgences that impede it. Desire may inspire you to dream of success, but discipline teaches you to walk the path that leads there, step by deliberate step. The most successful individuals are not necessarily those with the strongest desire. Many people possess intense longing, vivid imagination, and endless dreams, yet few see them realized. The differentiator is discipline. Discipline converts thought into action, vision into routine, inspiration into repetition, and energy into results. It bridges the invisible gap between wanting something and actually possessing it. Desire opens the mind to possibility. Discipline opens the door to reality. Furthermore, discipline strengthens character. Every act of self-control, every commitment honored, every repetition completed builds inner strength. This strength is not external, it is internal, and it becomes self-reinforcing. The more disciplined one becomes, the easier it is to act in alignment with long-term goals. Desire unchecked can scatter the mind and weaken resolve. Discipline, consistent and deliberate, fortifies it. Even when failure occurs, discipline ensures that lessons are absorbed, patterns are corrected, and momentum resumes. Desire alone often leads to repeated mistakes, confusion, and regret. Discipline, by contrast, allows mistakes to become feedback rather than defeat. It creates continuity and resilience, ensuring that the bridge from desire to reality is not broken by temporary setbacks. Discipline is the quiet, steady force that holds vision together with action, intention together with execution, and longing together with tangible achievement. Life is shaped by moments, often small, seemingly insignificant, yet profoundly powerful. One decision, one action, one word, one glance, even the briefest impulse, can ripple outward and leave effects that last a lifetime. Temporary impulses are the silent architects of consequence. They appear sudden, fleeting, and trivial, but they carry the power to change the course of your life. Most people underestimate this because impulses feel minor in the moment. They feel natural, instinctive, even unavoidable. Yet history, personal experience, and countless stories of regret demonstrate that what feels small today can become irreversible tomorrow. Impulses are the mind's way of seeking immediate satisfaction. They are the urge to act before thinking, to react before observing, to indulge before considering. The mind, driven by emotion, habit, and desire, whispers that immediate action will bring relief, pleasure, or resolution. Anger demands expression, desire demands satisfaction, curiosity demands attention, fear demands avoidance. These impulses feel urgent, necessary, real. In the moment, they feel right. They feel harmless. They feel like a fleeting choice with no long-term consequences. But this is the illusion. The truth is that temporary impulses, when acted upon without awareness or restraint, can shape reality in ways that cannot be undone. Consider the role of anger. A single outburst of rage can destroy relationships that took years to build. A harsh word spoken in the heat of frustration, a comment typed impulsively in the immediacy of irritation, a reaction in public or private, all can leave scars that time cannot heal. The impulse is temporary, a spike of emotion that lasts seconds or minutes. But the consequences, broken trust, severed connections, regret, alienation, are enduring. Many people justify these impulses at the moment, telling themselves that the reaction was necessary, deserved, or minor. Yet the results remain permanent and often disproportionate to the original trigger. one uncontrolled instant of emotion can echo for years. Desire functions in a similar way. Temptation presents itself subtly, seemingly harmless, and urges immediate satisfaction. A brief indulgence in what is not aligned with long-term goals, a fleeting distraction, a poor financial decision, a compromise of values can spiral outward into consequences that persist long after the moment passes. The human mind rationalizes impulses effortlessly. It's just this once, it says. It won't matter. But repeated small choices, each rooted in temporary impulse, accumulate like drops of water eroding stone. Over time, what begins as a minor lapse can evolve into pattern, habit, and eventually irreversible change. Impulse creates trajectory. Momentary indulgence directs life toward paths that may not be correct, healthy, or desirable. Fear is another impulse that creates permanent consequences. The instant panic to avoid discomfort, confrontation, or uncertainty may seem like a rational choice in the moment. Fear urges retreat, avoidance, hesitation. Acting impulsively on fear may provide temporary relief, but it undermines growth, opportunity, and resilience. One decision to avoid, one impulse to flee can close doors permanently. Jobs, relationships, experiences, and personal growth opportunities are often lost not to inability or misfortune, but to momentary impulses driven by fear. The person who acts on fear repeatedly builds a life of limitation, constraint, and stagnation. Impulses, when unchecked, are not random, they are architects of a constrained future. Even small, seemingly inconsequential impulses matter. A minor lie told to avoid discomfort can grow into a web of deception. A trivial act of laziness can compound into missed opportunities. A moment of jealousy or pride can plant seeds of resentment that take root in relationships and character. These impulses appear temporary, harmless, easily forgotten. Yet their impact can be subtle and enduring. People underestimate the way small choices compound over time. Life is cumulative. Temporary impulses may be brief, but their consequences, layered and compounded, can become permanent realities. Impulses are also dangerous because they are seductive. They offer immediate relief from tension, discomfort, or desire. They promise reward, pleasure, recognition, or avoidance of pain. In the instant, they feel necessary, they feel justified, they feel unavoidable. Yet the very strength of their pull is evidence of their danger. Anything that demands instant attention, immediate reaction, or rapid satisfaction without reflection is capable of altering life permanently. The mind, driven by emotion, often cannot differentiate between what is urgent and what is important. And in this confusion, a single moment of impulsive choice can redirect the trajectory of life. The permanence of consequences is magnified when impulses intersect with relationships, wealth, health, or reputation. Words spoken in haste cannot be unsaid. Actions taken impulsively cannot be undone. Decisions made without reflection leave marks that cannot be erased. A brief lapse in judgment can alter career trajectories, dismantle trust, or erode health. The impulsive choices of youth can shadow adulthood. The impulsive choices of adulthood can haunt the future. In every domain of life, temporary impulses are the seeds of permanent outcomes. Awareness is the antidote. Observing the mind in the moment of impulse, recognizing the desire to react, pause, or indulge, is the first step toward preventing permanent damage. Impulses are not inherently wrong, but action without reflection is dangerous. By cultivating awareness, by building restraint, by pausing before acting, the human mind can prevent fleeting urges from shaping destiny. The bridge between impulse and action is observation, and it is in that pause that life's direction can be preserved. Yet most people do not pause. Most people surrender to the first surge of emotion, the first pull of desire, the first voice of fear. They believe that fleeting impulses are harmless, forgetting that the mind rationalizes, the heart justifies, and the body acts. One moment becomes a decision, one decision becomes a pattern, one pattern becomes a life. Temporary impulses are deceptively small, but the life they construct can be irreversible. They operate quietly, invisibly, silently guiding human behavior while masking their true destructive potential. Many people spend their lives trying to control the world around them. They try to control circumstances, influence outcomes, manipulate situations, and even dominate other people. They believe that power is measured by the ability to impose their will externally, to bend others to their desires, to shape life according to their whims. Yet this pursuit, as seductive as it appears, is ultimately hollow. True power does not come from controlling others. True power begins within. Mastering yourself, the mind, the emotions, the impulses, and the choices is far more powerful, far more sustainable, and far more transformative than attempting to control anything outside of you. The reason is simple: the external world is unpredictable. People are inconsistent, situations are volatile, and life is full of forces beyond your control. When you base your power on influencing what is outside, you are at the mercy of circumstances. Your sense of strength rises and falls with the reactions of others, with the success of plans, with the shifting tides of events. You become reactive, fragile, and dependent on variables you cannot govern. The illusion of control is comforting, but it is fleeting. It offers the appearance of power, yet underneath it is fragile, temporary, and unreliable. Self-mastery, by contrast, is internal and absolute. When you master yourself, you are no longer dependent on how others behave or what life throws at you. You are steady, grounded, and unshaken. Self-mastery is the ability to observe your thoughts without being consumed by them, to regulate your emotions without suppression, to act intentionally rather than react impulsively, and to choose what aligns with your values rather than what satisfies immediate desire. This internal power cannot be taken away, manipulated, or undermined by external forces because it exists within the domain that no one else can touch. Consider the mind. A person who seeks to control others often acts from fear, insecurity, or a need for validation. They react to every challenge, argument, or disagreement as though their power depends on winning, persuading, or dominating. They are enslaved by external perception and the opinions of others. In contrast, a person who masters their mind is not swayed by outside criticism, praise, or provocation. They maintain clarity in thought, discernment in judgment, and focus in action. Mastery over the mind allows decisions to be made from reason rather than reaction, from awareness rather than instinct, and from principle rather than convenience. The one who controls themselves commands reality. The one who seeks to control others is commanded by it. Emotional mastery magnifies this power. Emotions are among the most volatile and deceptive forces in life. Anger, jealousy, fear, desire, pride, they surge and ebb, often beyond conscious control. Many try to manage life by influencing how others feel, how they respond, or how they behave, believing that external influence will create safety or advantage. But emotions are internal phenomena. You cannot directly control what another feels. Attempting to do so is not only futile but exhausting. Mastering your own emotions, however, is transformative. It allows you to respond rather than react, to act with composure rather than impulsivity, to remain unshaken by provocation, and to influence situations indirectly through calm, presence, and clarity. When you are in control of your own mind and heart, the world naturally bends to your influence, not through manipulation, but through strength of character and quiet authority. Discipline, as a facet of self-mastery, further amplifies power. Discipline is the ability to choose what matters, prioritize long-term results over short-term impulses, and consistently follow a path aligned with purpose. People who attempt to control others often waste energy on distraction, drama, and persuasion, chasing external outcomes that are inconsistent and unreliable. The disciplined, self-mastered individual channels effort inward, building skills, cultivating wisdom, and nurturing resilience. This internal cultivation is a force no one can diminish. When you master yourself, your energy is focused, your actions are precise, and your influence is natural rather than forced. Mastery also grants freedom. Those who try to control others are trapped by circumstance. Their peace depends on outcomes they cannot guarantee. Their relationships, careers, and social standing become fragile because they are invested in the behaviors and reactions of others. Mastering yourself liberates you from this dependency. Your stability no longer depends on external validation or obedience. You become independent of opinion, of judgment, and of chaos. You act because you choose to, not because circumstances compel you. This freedom is the true measure of power when your peace and direction are internal. External forces are powerless to destabilize you. Influence is another consequence of self-mastery. When you seek to control others, the result is often resistance, resentment, and superficial compliance. People may obey out of fear or obligation, but true respect, trust, and admiration cannot be commanded. Mastering yourself, on the other hand, naturally draws others. Your composure, clarity, and consistent character create respect, your presence creates trust, and your wisdom commands attention. People follow influence born of internal mastery far more willingly than coercion born of external control. Control over self generates ripple effects, shaping interactions, decisions, and environments in ways that domination never can. Even failure, setbacks, and adversity become less threatening under self-mastery. Those who seek to control others crumble when circumstances shift. Every disappointment is magnified because their foundation is external. The self-mastered, however, adapts, endures, and grows. Control over self allows perspective, resilience, and creativity. Obstacles are evaluated without panic, mistakes without self-doubt, and challenges without distraction. Mastery internalizes power, it internalizes response, energy, and strategy. In contrast, the external controller remains at the mercy of fortune, emotion, and human unpredictability. Finally, self-mastery is permanent. Control over others is temporary, influence fades, people change, opportunities vanish, and circumstances shift. The person who has cultivated discipline, awareness, and emotional composure carries their power into every domain of life. It is internal, invisible, yet undeniable. The energy, focus, and presence generated through self-mastery cannot be taken, manipulated, or diminished. It is the silent force that creates freedom, shapes reality, and sustains success long after attempts to dominate externally have failed or faded. Before any mastery is achieved, before discipline is cultivated, before impulses are managed, there must be awareness. Awareness is the quiet, deliberate observation of the mind, heart, and body. It is the conscious recognition of thoughts, emotions, and patterns as they arise, without judgment or immediate reaction. Without awareness, self-control remains theoretical, discipline remains rote, and inner peace remains a distant idea. Awareness is the first step, the foundation, the doorway into true inner control. It is the light that illuminates the hidden corners of your mind, revealing impulses, emotions, and desires that often operate unnoticed, yet dictate your actions, your decisions, and ultimately the course of your life. Most people live unconsciously, reacting to every stimulus as it arrives. An insult triggers anger. A temptation sparks indulgence. A fear provokes retreat. These reactions feel automatic, natural, inevitable, and they dominate the narrative of everyday life. But beneath every reaction is a choice, and that choice becomes possible only through awareness. Awareness allows you to observe the surge of emotion before it becomes an action. It allows you to notice the impulse before it drives behavior. It allows you to see the thought patterns that shape your perception of reality. Without awareness, these forces act as invisible strings, pulling you toward decisions and consequences without your consent, and the results are often regret, conflict, or stagnation. Awareness begins with observation. It requires a willingness to sit with yourself and notice what arises internally. Thoughts, often fleeting and repetitive, are the first territory to explore. The untrained mind believes every thought must be followed, reacted to, or acted upon. I feel this way, therefore I must act. I want this, therefore I must pursue it. Yet this assumption is false. Awareness teaches that thoughts are not commands, they are signals, information, and reflections. By observing thoughts without immediate reaction, you create space between stimulus and response. This space, however small, is where control begins. It is where choice becomes possible. It is where power shifts from external chaos to internal mastery. Emotions are equally critical to observe. Anger, fear, desire, jealousy, and excitement all arise naturally, but when unexamined, they dominate behavior. Awareness allows you to witness these emotional surges without being swept away. It is the ability to feel without reacting, to experience without surrendering, to notice without justification. For example, when anger arises, the unobservant mind reacts instantly, often creating harm. The aware mind recognizes the surge, acknowledges it, and pauses. In that pause lies the opportunity to respond thoughtfully rather than react destructively. Awareness transforms emotional energy from chaos into guidance. It allows emotions to serve as signals rather than as masters. The body too speaks, often in ways the conscious mind overlooks. Physical sensations, tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, tension in the shoulders, are early indicators of stress, fear, desire, or temptation. Awareness of bodily cues is a bridge to understanding the mind. By noticing physical reactions, you gain insight into internal states before they dictate behavior. A racing heartbeat signals impatience. Clenched jaws signal frustration. Tension in the gut signals hesitation or fear. Awareness brings these subtle signals into consciousness, offering the chance to intervene, adjust, and guide action with intentionality. Patterns of behavior are another dimension revealed through awareness. Most people repeat actions unconsciously. Habits, both constructive and destructive, run silently beneath conscious thought. Awareness illuminates these patterns. It exposes where you act out of impulse, repeat mistakes, or surrender to comfort over growth. When patterns are recognized, they can be addressed. Without awareness, the repetition continues unchecked, and life is governed by unseen forces rather than conscious choice. True inner control emerges only when recurring tendencies are observed, understood, and gradually transformed. Awareness also teaches presence. So often, humans operate in the past or future, replaying memories, projecting fears, or imagining desires. In this state, action is reactive, impulsive, or distracted. Awareness anchors the mind in the present moment, the only space where choice and control are possible. Being present allows you to respond with clarity, to notice urges without acting immediately, and to engage with reality rather than illusion. Presence is not passive, it is the active, deliberate participation in the flow of life with observation, understanding, and intention. Another aspect of awareness is self-honesty. It is the willingness to see oneself clearly, without excuses, rationalizations, or blame. To observe your weaknesses, your tendencies, and your blind spots requires courage. Many avoid this because the truth is uncomfortable. Yet avoidance only strengthens unconscious patterns. Awareness requires facing the self openly, acknowledging impulses, emotions, and patterns without judgment. It is through this honesty that inner control becomes possible. Once you see the tendencies that have guided your behavior unconsciously, you can consciously choose a different path. Awareness is also cumulative. Each moment of observation strengthens your capacity for self-control. Each pause before action builds the muscle of restraint. Each acknowledgement of emotion without immediate reaction expands the horizon of choice. Awareness does not need to be perfect or constant to be transformative. Even sporadic moments of attention gradually shift the internal landscape. Over time, the mind becomes less reactive, the heart less turbulent, and the impulses less commanding. What was once unconscious becomes conscious, and what was once uncontrollable becomes manageable. The ultimate power of awareness is that it initiates the process of transformation. Discipline, patience, emotional mastery, and self-control all flow from the foundation of awareness. Without seeing what is happening inside, there can be no meaningful effort to redirect thought, adjust behavior, or regulate impulses. Awareness is the mirror that reflects reality within. It is the key that unlocks intentional action. It is the first step because it precedes every choice, every pause, every act of restraint, and every decision that leads to growth. True inner control is impossible without awareness because control is never about denying impulses, ignoring emotions, or suppressing thoughts. Control is the ability to respond consciously, to navigate life intentionally, and to act in alignment with values and long-term goals. Awareness is the lens through which this navigation becomes possible. It reveals the landscape of the mind and heart, showing where danger, opportunity, and power lie. Without awareness, life is reactive, chaotic, and unconsciously driven. With awareness, life becomes deliberate, guided, and internally empowered,